Okay. All right, cool. So there is an assignment. It's called Lighting Ruins, and there's this file called a runes file for students, C4D file. And that's going to be this particular file that we're looking at. Now, I'm going to go over this after we're done over the class, but this is like an assignment. And this is a very easy one. I kind of designed this assignment for you guys to kind of experiment with the lights and to have fun playing around with it without being super serious. All right. So once you have that up, you should have this file, how it's located like this. Again, this is a something that I built. You can zoom in and look around and have fun with it whatsoever and whatnot. So this was like something that I was gonna do with normal maps and stuff like that, but I never got around to doing it. All right. So I use this now for lighting experiments. It actually works really good. All right. So just make sure that I am not. All right. Cool. There we go. So inside here, you see that in our objects, we have a couple different lights. We have an infinite light, we have an area light, spotlight, a target light, and then just a regular light. Now, all of these are located up in this little holder right here. So this little light bulb right here is a Omni light, or you know, they call it just a light right here, but this is just kind of a light source that kind of goes in all directions. We're going to go over all of these for the most part. We're not going to do IES lights or PBR lights and stuff like that, but we're going to go over the majority of these. We have our light, our spotlight, our area light, our target light, and our infinite light. Those are the main ones that we have. Now, right now, it doesn't look anything different because all of these are turned off. All right. Now, I could turn them all on at the same time. You're going to see all sorts of crazy stuff happen. And eventually what happens too is, because I have so many lights on there, everything is really, really blown out. So it's very similar to if I have any type of a physical scene and you just like bombard it with way too many lights, everything gets really blown out and whatnot. All of these lights can act, they have the benefit of acting just like a physical light, a real light. And then the other thing that they have the ability to do is to act in ways that physical lights can't act. So there is a benefit to using them as well. All right, so first one that we're going to look at right here is our we don't do the infrared light. Let's just do our regular lights. So that's going to be our light source down at the bottom. This is called an Omni light. And what this does is that it shoots light in all directions, all around it. So you see those little spikies that are around there? It's kind of giving you a visual representation of kind of what the light is doing, the way that it's pointing its rays. All right. Now, what we're going to see here is on our attributes area, you see that you have all these different tabs and there's all these little different things right there. We are going to go over for the most part, all these tabs and the different settings that are inside there. The nice thing is about these lights is that all of these, for the most part, are all going to be the same. Some light source have the ability to unlock certain things where other ones can't do certain settings. Not a problem with that whatsoever. So first things first, I'm going to move this down just a little bit more so we can kind of see what happens as you move it around. You can see that the light is giving us different looks right there, just depending on where the light is located. Now, if I go to my attributes area, Yes, you have your basics. Your basic and coordinates are just similar to anything else that's inside here. I can animate my light source, so if you want to animate your light source, you can. So for this particular light source, like a rotation won't matter. But if you do like area light sources or the spotlights and stuff like that, or the infinite lights, the rotation will matter. But for this particular one, it doesn't really matter because it shoots it out in all directions. And then we have our general tab. Now this is going to be a really big tab right here inside here. Now, first things first we have is our color. So we can add some sort of color to our light source. And as I add light or color to my light source, you're going to see that it's going to be filled my whole scene with that yellow. Now, if I turn this off, you can see that in my scene, I have no material. You look down here, there's no materials for it whatsoever. So I'm actually able to project, when I have it on, this yellow color to it, you know, and I can do all these colors that you want. If you look over here, you have that little diamond. So you can animate the colors going from left to right as well. Now, typically, if I have any type of a light source that I'm going to do, I don't just leave it as a white. Very few lights are going to project like a pure white. You'll have like LED lights can actually do like a pure light, but you know, if you look at, you know, the like our lights that we have here, you know, the sun, other stuff like that, there's a little bit of a tone of a color to it. So I always add just a tiny little bit. It's not going to be a huge difference for it, but you know, having a little bit right there is going to give us a little bit more of a color to our light source. It's going to start looking a little bit more realistic. I mean, you can go really far like this, but you know, in real life, you're not really going to have things that are going to be blowing out that color. But you have that option, which is nice. I like to have options for this, so you know.
I have a problem with my space in general. It's like diagonal, not flat. It's like that.
Oh, that was the like the other one, like the light source right here. Like they'll have their own grid, and that's going to give it a. Okay, cool. So we now have the ability to add color, which is awesome. Again, we can animate these if we want. Another thing too is that if you want, you could always use a temperature or stuff like that. And once you have that turned on, you can then rotate through these different colors values. Now, this is a really great tool if I want to animate like a color for my light and stuff like that, and be able to skip like greens and purples and stuff like that. These values right here allows you to animate to go through here from the reds to the blues without having like a green light and stuff like that. So if you want to show like a visual representation of something being really hot, and then something, let's say you're at a furnace and you're getting all these really bright or intense red colors, and then you want to visually show that maybe the furnace is turned off and things are starting to cool down. So then you would animate the light color to go from a red to more of a blue and stuff like that. That allows you to have that visual representation. You do that all the time in movies and stuff like that. So using colored lights and stuff like that for movies for different reasons is always beneficial. So as you can see, you can animate it go left to right, and then you also have the ability to do your intensity. Even if I don't have that temperature turned on, I do have the ability to do my intensity. Now, this is going to determine on how bright the light is. I can go down to 0%, and I can go to negative 0% as far as intensity goes. But I mean, once you go to the point where the light is turned off, you can't turn something off more. All right. But if I go to 100%, you can see that I can overexpose my light and have it go well above the 100%. You know, so now if I render this out, this overexposed and stuff like that. Yes.
Does that 100% correlate to like theoretical lumens or something like that? Is there?
No, it's just an intensity stuff like that. So, this is like so like the intensity stuff is not like a lumen per se. It's going to be just like how strong the light is, and then if you want something to have like a more lumens, then you're just going to visually like guess with it. There's no, it's not like a very scientific thing as far as this part goes. So these are very artistic tools, so a lot of times they try to keep them in that direction and stuff like that. So I don't know if maybe let's see if they have something on the help thing. If they have, see if there's something for the help thing that they have inside there about lumens. Nope. Yeah. So they don't have anything for lumens inside there as well. So it's just going to be a thing that you have to figure out for yourself on what looks good and whatnot. But you can you can do that. You can overexpose things. You did see that I got really bright, and it did kind of like get a cell shaded look. But if you're looking for more of a cell shaded look, I wouldn't do it with a light source. There's actually other tools to do that with. But you know, it's like, you know, it's nice to be able to go above what's the maximum, because for whatever reason, maybe you want to have a blinding light that kind of just floods the whole thing, and then that way you can do it inside the 3D environment and stuff like that as well. So options are always good. Okay, cool. Now we're going to keep going down. Right here, we do have our type, and this allows you to switch between light sources. So I can change it to a spotlight, I can change it to an infinite light, I can change it between these different ones. The one that looks like on this new update, which is really nice, is that whatever the type is right here, it looks like it is updating right there. On older versions, it didn't update that little icon. So if you made an Omnilight and you switched it to a spotlight, it wouldn't update that little icon.
Is infinite just not attenuate?
Infinite is like sunlight, so it's like directional. You pick one direction and it'll go in that direction. We'll go over. We're going to go over all of those. So, but all right. So you do have the ability to do that. Please understand that yes, you can animate these lights to change between the different types, but there is no blend between them. It's all just binary. It's like either one or the other. So it's just gonna, as soon as you have that keyframe where it switches it, it's going to switch it at that frame right there. It's not going to blend between there. If you wanted to do some sort of a blend between one light source to another light source, the best thing would be to have two light sources that are on top of each other, and then you just manually keyframe the intensity. So from one to go to 0 to 100, the other one from 100 to 0. And that is how you get like a blend between them. All right, so next thing that we have right here is called shadow. Now you could be saying to yourself, well, you know, it looks like I already have shadowing on my 3D objects and stuff like that. Yes, we do. All 3D objects, doesn't matter if you have a light source on or not, has a form of self-shadowing. And what that means is that if there is any type of light source or not a light source, it will create a shadow on itself, all right? But it is not projecting a shadow that is being casted from the light. So to get any type of shadow to cast, you actually have to use a light source. And on top of that, then you have to select the different types of shadows. Now, if I open this up, you see I have 4 options. I have none. So that means I can have a light source that lights the scene, does not create shadows, which is interesting and fun, and something you can't do in the real world. We also have these other ones. We have a shadow map soft, a ray trace hard, and an area. Now, I understand that this is ray traced hard and stuff like that. And ray tracing means something different. I don't know why they still use this verbiage when it is. It's just really more like just a hard light. We have a soft light right here. So, or a soft shadow. Now I'm gonna go over that. We're gonna render these out and we're gonna see what the difference is. So here is, let's get a nice overlook of this. We're gonna take a render here. There we go. Then I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna select my soft shadows. I don't really see a difference inside here. And then we're gonna hit this render button. And so let me open these up. So here's the difference between no shadows and a soft shadows. You can see that is now shadows are being projected. So the light source is somewhere right here in the middle. And as you can see on these cave stalagmites and stuff like that over there, that these parts of the ruins are projecting a shadow on it. Now, what this means here is that soft shadow is that if I look at the edges right here, you can see that it's a very soft edge. All right. If I would take pictures, like any of these edges right here, you're going to see that the shadows are very, very soft. All right. Now this took no time to render whatsoever. Now I'm going to keep talking about render time, so keep that in the back of your head. Now we're going to go to ray trace hard. All right. And then I'm going to hit my render again. What's the difference between these two? So here's the soft one, here's the hard one.
Edges are hard.
Exactly. So the edges are hard. So we have no shadows, our soft shadows, and our hard shadows. Now, depending on what you're doing, this might be useful and whatnot. Some of the light sources don't have access to the next one. The next one that we have is called an area shadow. Now, this is a more realistic shadow version. If I go ahead and I render it, what are some things that you guys see now? Here is no shadows, soft shadows, hard shadows, and area shadows.
I feel you get more of the picture.
It is softer than the hard shadows, and it is harder than some of the soft shadows here. All right, and what I say that, like, let's look at, and the other thing that we're going to get here too as well is that you're going to get gradients in your shadows. So if I look at, we'll see right here's a nice gradient. We have a little bit right over there as well. If I go to my soft shadows right here, it's all or nothing in the middle of the shadow, and only the edges are really being blended. If I go to my hard shadows right here, it's just all shadow. There's no variation. If I go to my area shadow, you can see that it's starting to blend away and stuff like that. And that's how real shadows work. Depending on your light source, what's creating the shadow and stuff like that, you're going to get a combination of light and hard shadows. You have this in this room. If you look at the carpet and stuff like that, you can see the shadows created by the desks and stuff like that. We're going to have a combination of both light and hard shadows depending on the light source you have, the angle, and all that other crap that happens right there. And some shadows have a bleed where they get darker from one part and then they kind of go away because maybe there's some other light sources right here. Now we can play around with our area shadows, and there's settings for that as well to make them more precise and stuff like that. But this area shadow is the best of both worlds because and even more, because not only do I get hard edges, I get soft edges, but I also get a variation with it. And this is starting to be more of a realistic like a lighting for this. Now, not every single light source has access to our area light, unless they updated that. So let's see if they updated that. Did they update that? Yeah, all right, cool, awesome, excellent. Now they finally, so in this version looks like they updated it so that every single one has access to the area light. That's great. Good on you, Cinema 40. All right, so So that is good that we do have access to all those, the area lights and stuff like that. We also have, this next one that we have is called our visible light. So what is a visible light? That would be, let's say if you are, you have a light ray in a room where there is dirt or dust in the air and you can visually see the light rays. Without that dirt or stuff like that, you really can't see light rays. I mean, like we really, in general, we cannot see light rays with our eyeballs. Unless there's like that's something that's happening where there's dust in the air and the light's hitting all the little particles and stuff like that. That's how you can see them. Now we can do that effect here, and we have a couple different options right here. Now the first one that we have right here is our visible light. Now once I turn that on, you're going to see that there's something that's happening here where I have this circle around it. Now these are settings inside here that we can kind of play around with, especially in this visibility. But what this gives us is a bounding box for how far out the light rays are going to go. Now, as far as light goes, right now, we don't have any type of bounding box for our light sources themselves. So if I have something that's way out in the nether regions way over here, where there's nothing over there, this light source, if it has direct line of sight, could light that the object up with the light rays, because there's no decay on there. But with visible light, by default, you have a decay on there. Now, let's go ahead and hit the render button. And before I do that, one thing we want to see with our area light is that our render time bumped up to 2 seconds. Now, again, this is nothing crazy right now, but you're going to see as we go through here, we add more lights, we add more settings, we tweak stuff around that the render time is going to start climbing up. All right, so let's go ahead and hit this render button for our visible light. So this gives us a different look here, and the only thing I changed was just added that visible light. All right, now the setting that we have right here with visible for the visible light, it doesn't really interact with our geometry or anything like that. It's just saying, it's just going to give us an overall dusty feeling throughout the whole thing. There's no really a rhyme or reason for like, it's not going to interact with any of our objects. The next ones that we have is where it starts interacting with our light source. If you see that we have our light objects for here, if I go to volumetric and I hit the render button, here's the volumetric, here's just the visible light.
What's the last one?
This one's the volumetric, this one's the volume. So what's happening here is that the light rays are interacting, or like, sorry, the visible light is interacting with the geometry, and just like light, the light sources itself is only going where the light rays are going to go. So like once they hit this big boulder right here, it's not going to give us visible light right here. And same thing with all of these columns. That's why we're getting all of these like little like different levels for the light rays, because the volumetric or the visible light itself cannot go through objects, whereas this one, it does. This one just kind of goes over all over. So and there's no right or wrong reason. It just depends on what you want. So like if I wanted something to be just overall foggy, you know, this could be a way that I could have something be overall foggy in this area, and I don't have to worry about stuff right there. But this one kind of gives me the look of like there's a light source right here, and it's projecting through that. So it just depends on what you want. And also understand too is that when you build your scenes with lights, you're not going to just have one light. You're going to have multiple lights. So let's say I have this right here, but I just have this for just the volumetric feel of like of the end there, but I don't want it to necessarily project like it does here. And I could have other lights that do other things as well. All right. There we go. And then we have, the next one is the inverse volumetric, and we'll go ahead and hit the render button on that one. So what do you guys see the difference between the volumetric and the inverse volumetric?
It's lighting the shadows.
So what's happening is, on this one, with the volumetric, where the light doesn't project, the inverse does, is that it's now projecting those light rays on the spots that on the other word would be black. So it's kind of like inverting it. So it's pretty cool to to have that option to do that for whatever you want. So maybe you're doing something where it's like the upside down world and everything's backwards. And so this would be something that you could use to play around with that. So again, having options to do stuff are always great. This is not something that you're going to necessarily use all the time. Maybe you have a character and they have a power and you want to kind of give them a weird look to kind of represent that. That could be something that could do that, where maybe they're in the spirit realm or something like that. I don't know. You guys are going to be all sorts of creative with this. So.
Can you think of an example where it's actually been used?
I might not know, but again, they could have been creative where like they used it on conjunction with other things. So like maybe like the powers thing where that, like somebody just threw that in there, and then just to kind of give that little bit of extra like look of like it's the light is bleeding off of objects, because that's what, if you really kind of look at that kind of gives the look of like the lights bleeding off there. So like I probably wouldn't use it just like this, but this could be work very well in conjunction with something else. So. All right, there we go. So the other thing that's really nice too is that you can turn off your shadows for your volumetrics as well, and then we'll render that, see what that looks. So here's my volumetrics. There's no shadows. You can get that look as well. If I turn that back on, other things you can do here is you have all of these check mark boxes. So the first one is no illumination. So if I turn that on and I hit the render button, I now have this light source is no longer creating any type of light, but I'm getting the volumetric levels for that as well. You have an ambient illumination that allows you to do this stuff. And this allows you to turn off different things. So I can turn off the diffuse on objects. I can turn off the specular for an object. And so what these allow you to do is that, let's say my scene is a little bit too dark in my render, all right? And I need to bring out my objects from the background. Now, typically, whenever you do that in real life, you'd have like a backlight and stuff like that. Well, that backlight creates a shadow, right? You can't have light sources in the real world without it creating shadows and stuff like this. With turning off the diffuse and the specular, it allows you to lighten up an object, but to not add a specular. So like the specular is like the little highlight that you have on objects. So like on your pool balls, that's going to be the little light that comes from the light source itself. So you could have an additional light that doesn't interact with that source, doesn't make things look shiny and stuff like that. So it turns out the shininess, you turn off the diffuse on there. There's also something global illumination. We're going to get into that, but you can turn these on or off. So being able to have these options, again, not something that you're going to use every single day, but they're there. So again, having options is awesome. Most of these you can, the only one you can't keyframe is this export to compositing. Any of these checkmark boxes on or off are, when you animate them, they're binary, so there's no blend between them. So just keep that in mind. Same thing with any of these type shadows. So like on this particular one, the only channels that are a float value, so that you can blend between them, is the color one. We have our temperature, use temperature, and then the color temperature and the intensity as well. Or actually not the use temperature, the color temperature and intensity. Use temperature is a binary, so it's either on or off. Okay, cool. Now, before I kind of get into more of the details and the visibility, stuff like that, let's kind of go over a little bit more of what these different light sources do. So the first one that we have is our, let me turn off this volumetric right there, is our light source. And that projected light in all sorts of different directions. Now, the next one that we have is our infinite light. Now, if I select that, you're going to see that there's going to be a weird grid that is going across your world. It's going to be tilted a little bit right there. Now, what's happening is that this grid is giving you a representation of the direction that the light is going in. And it's going to go down this blue handle right here. Now, the infinite light is like the sun, something that's very massive, very bright, that's going to be pointing in one direction. So just like how you go outside, depending on the type of the time of the day, the light is going to be pointing in a certain direction, and it's going to be creating shadows in different directions. So the shadows from the sun in the morning are in different directions than they are at night or in the afternoon. And so what we have right here is this infinite light. Now, it doesn't matter if I move this up and down this thing, because the angle hasn't really changed. So if I move it up and down right here, it doesn't change. If I move it up and down right here, it doesn't change. If I move this back and forth, nothing is changing, because this is all done on rotation, because the rotation of the direction that's going to go in. So when I move this around, it doesn't change anything. And as you can see from here, that's where the light is. So if I look down this handle right here, this is the direction that the sun is kind of coming down at. So if I look on this direction, everything's dark because the sun's not going to go over there. Now, if I get my rotational tool out, I can move it around. I can rotate it around and do it however I want. And the angle and the placement of it is going to give me a different value. And what you're going to see here is when you have that rotational tool is this big, long orange handle that's going to be right here. That's going to go give you a visual representation of where the light direction is coming from. So if it makes more sense for you in your brain to say, okay, well, the sun is actually like way up here in this scene, and then kind of figure out where the rotational value goes. So like if I say, okay, well, it's actually gonna be down in this direction, then that's fine. But if you are okay with it being really close, because you're like, okay, well, I need to have access to it and whatnot and see what's going on right here, it doesn't matter where it's located as far as position goes. It's all dependent on the rotational value. That's up.
So this one, basically all of the light rays are in the same
Direction.
they're parallel to the orange line.
Yep.
No matter how far.
Doesn't matter how far. It's infinite. So just this is like the way you always look at it is not so much like I mean, you could always say it's the sun, but if you have a big enough, if you're in a room that's strong enough, it's big enough that and it's directional, then it could be the same thing. So maybe you're in a room that has a big wall that is just a bunch of lights. The lights are all going to be pointing in that one direction, so you could use that as well. But it's pretty much like it's all going in the same direction.
So if I understand correctly,
Mhm.
if I'm trying to map, say, like sunrise to sunset or something,
Mhm.
essentially, all I'm doing is just a rotation. That's it. Okay.
Yep. Now we can use this in conjunction with like a target tag. So if I take this right here and I add, we're going to get into target tags in a little bit, just so you have a little idea as well. Where is it? Where is the target tag? I'll just type it up there. Target tag. So what a target tag does, and we'll get into this real quickly, is that it allows you to have an object look at that. And so like if I make a null object, which is just an object that is in space and time, just right here is my null object. I could have this target tag on the infinite one go point to this null. And then as I move it around, it's going to change my rotational values. So you could quite possibly have something like a light, you know, if I do my positions correctly as well. Another way you could do this as well, if that is not your jam, is that instead of doing a target tag, is that I could take this infinite light, make it a child of the null, and then just rotate the null as well. And it gives you the day and night source as well, which probably would work better than the target tag.
And so the null just maintains the same bit, or sorry,
So what's happening is that the null, we're rotating the null, so that's, it's like giving it an additional rotational point, like how we did with the ball bounce and stuff like that, and After Effects, where we technically we had a composition and like we're inside the composition, we did the rotation, and then the other one we moved it down so that we could do the squash and stretch. So that typically that gave the ball 2 rotational points. So one to spin the object and the other one to do our squash and stretch with this. What this does is it gives us 2 rotational points, one with the null because it's the parent, and allows us to rotate it around. So again, as a child, so it has to follow along with what it is. And then we also have the rotational point of this thing to rotate as well. So this one now has 2 rotational points.
but I guess what I'm asking is when you make the a child of the null, at that point, essentially its position is locked relative to the null, and as I manipulate the null, it's going to move relative to where that is, unless I start modifying the actual light again.
It's not locked because when something's locked, because like when I had the target right there, it would be locked, because like when you say the word locked with this, is that you don't have access to it at all. But when it's a parent-child system, it's I still have access to this rotational value right here. So I could have had this rotate crazy, and then also while at the same time have this rotation going on as well. Because what's happening, this is like the parent-child system. So this is my parent, and wherever I tell the parent to go, which is right here, that's the child infinitely, it's going to follow along. But then the child of it can do whatever it wants. It's not going to affect the parent whatsoever. All right, cool. So, you know, again, I have the same options for some stuff. I don't have the option for a visible light inside of this as well. So it's all so gravy. Again, so some things might not have access to certain things, but again, this is a great way to have like a base light system that you're going to have, and then you could have other light systems that do different things. Now, I believe that at one point in time, you guys are going to have a lighting course with real life lights. And then you can learn how to, like, the placement of lights and stuff like that can be very important as well. But if you guys learn more and more with the techniques to use with lighting a real scene, you can apply that in lighting your 3D scenes as well, because it's, you know, we're trying to mimic the same thing. We just have the benefit to be able to turn off certain aspects of lights that you can't do in the real world. All right, so there's my infinite light. Next ones that we have is our area light. Now I'm gonna turn this area light on, and we're gonna go ahead and render this out. So what's happening here in the area light is you can see that there is light source on both sides. Now, and then we have this big dark line that's through the system. Now what's happening here by default, and we can fix that as well, is that there are light rays being projected in this shape going outwards that way, or going out this way. And then also on this side, there's light rays that are going out in this box shape in that direction as well. Now what happens is, because and again, we have options to turn it off, that there are technically no light rays that are going down this path, because while this may be like almost infinitely small, there's some spots where there's no light rays going on there. So that's why you're gonna have that black line. Now again, we're gonna get into it when we get to more of these settings and stuff like that. We do have ways to get around it, but that is a great way. Now, why would you want to use this instead of a area light? Is that this is gonna, or sorry, an area light instead of a light source, is that this allows us to have more control over where the light, the shape of the light source is going to be. So like this could be more of a, there we go. This is going to give me more of a flatter look. And then if I make this really big and really tall, it should give me a different look as well. Now, it might not be very, it's not going to be very different right now, but you can see even through here is that depending on the shape of the light, I'm getting different lighting right here. So like this one is vertical, this is one is horizontal. So what I'm seeing here is that I'm getting more light overall through the base, but like right here, I'm getting greater light vertically. Now, the area light by default by itself is all right. It gets more powerful once you start adding on more and more stuff like your ability to cut down on how far it goes, like the decay of it and stuff like that. But you know, that's what we have right there. The next one that we have is our spotlight. So if I turn that on, like a spotlight. All right, with the spotlight, I can move it up and down. I can turn it around. This is just like a spotlight that you would have like with a flashlight or a stage light or a light on a helicopter or like maybe like headlights and stuff like that. Some type of light that kind of goes out really small and more of a cone shape as well. The last light that we're going to kind of go over here is our target light. Now, so we have our spotlight and our target light. The target light is the same thing as a spotlight. The only difference is that we have this thing called the target tag. It's going to, when I create a target light, it's going to create two things. It's going to create the target light object, which is actually the thing that's going to be creating our light source, and then it creates a target light, or sorry, we have our target light, and then it's going to be our light target. And what this does is that if I move my light target, you're going to see that the target light, which is right here, is going to be following it and looking at it. And that has to do with this target tag. Now, again, it just like I showed you before when I kind of briefly did it with the infinite light, you can apply these tags to anything you want. So they're useful for all sorts of things outside of lighting as well. You can use that to have something as simple as, you know, we have a character and they're going to be holding a sword. And so you can have the target object like a null inside the character's hand. And then you could have this target light be point at that object, and so it gives you the option to have it follow along, or if I want to throw, then the object can tumble and do whatever it wants. So I have the ability to hold something and then throw it or drop it, or have something be on a table, pick it up, and then it's inside your character's hand. So there's all sorts of things you can do with these different tags and stuff like that. But the target tag just makes your object follow along with that. Now, if I go to my target light source, I can move it left or right, up and down, you know, backwards and forwards. So I do have my positional ones, but if I get my rotation values, I can rotate this all I want. It's not going to do anything. So if I go to my target light right here and my coordinates, it doesn't matter. See, it doesn't really matter. Like, I guess I have control over this roll, but that really doesn't do anything for us. But the other values that we have, so our H and our P rotations, like I can move this all over I want, but this is locked because I have no control over that, because what's happening is this target tag is taking over direction of this. So now if I move in position. So if I go back to my here, right here. So I'm gonna move my thing in position. You're gonna see that the H and the P are gonna be changing right there. So there's still technically positional information that's gonna be inside here, but it's gonna be driven by the target tag itself. So these two channels are locked away from us, that we don't have control over them directly, but indirectly we do have control over them by the positional right here and it's like positional, not only this, but the positional one for the tag itself. So the tag itself. So that's going to also affect the rotational value. So here is where it's at 0.6, and I go back over this target stuff, and I'll go way down over here. You can see it's like -52 right there in that one. So this could be useful for all sorts of things. So let's say we're going to go and we want to have more interactive lights, and we're doing a 3D thing of a play, and we have somebody that's manning the spotlight that's going to stay on a character. We could make this target light, throw that in the corner where you would have your person doing the spotlight, and then you could apply or make this object a child of the character that you wanted to follow, and then it's going to follow that character. All right, and so then you don't have to worry about that. It's kind of like it automatically does what you want to. Maybe we're doing a scene and we're going to have a helicopter that's following a runaway car, and it's at nighttime, and then you want the helicopter's lights to be on that car the whole time. You could have a target light be a child of the helicopter, and so then it would follow the helicopter wherever it goes, and then you could have the target light be a child of the car, and then you can just animate the car doing what you want it to do, and then the helicopter where it's going to be, and you're going to have that spotlight that's going to be on there, but it's going to change its rotational values for you automatically however you want. So again, you're not gonna always use a target light, but there are times that you can use it and stuff like that. So it's nice to have those options. All right, cool. So now that we got that, I'm going to go back to my light, and we're going to go over some of our other settings. So we went over all our general and stuff like that. And now we're going to go over our details. Let me go ahead and turn on, yeah, we'll just do that right there. Okay, so I have my light source right here. There we go, put it wherever we want it to. Now, I do have the option once I go to my details. Now some of these, again, they're going to be there, but they might be turned off, and that could be depending, they might be in different settings. So like I have the outer radius aspect ratio and stuff like that inside my area light, whereas my Omni light, I do not have that as well. Now, one thing that's really cool to do is that you could have something called a shadow caster. So I can turn that on and I can render it out. And we don't have anything right here. Okay. Why don't I have anything right there? It's because with the shadow caster, it turned off its ability to create light, but it turns it on for it to be able to create a shadow. So if I turn on my infinite light right here, and let me turn off my light source right here. Let's do a render real quick. That's just with the infinite light. And then we're going to turn on our light source right here where it's only creating shadows and render that out. You're seeing that it's getting a little bit darker because what's happening is that this light source that's right here no longer is creating light. It's no longer lighting up our scene, but it's still creating shadows. So that can be useful for all sorts of different things. So like maybe we have our scene lit correctly how we want, and because we have different light sources and stuff like that. But if I add another light source in there, and it's gonna blow out our scene too much, but I want to have a shadow for whatever reason. There could be all sorts of different things. So like maybe I want to have an object that is going to create like an animated shadow on a wall. All right, but I don't want to light up the scene. I just want it to be a little more subtle, but for whatever reason, I want to have that shadow have its own light source. We can do that by applying just having the shadow casters and having it just projected on that thing. So there's all sorts of things you can do with it, but having that ability to make sure that that light is not on is going to give us a different look with that shadow caster. All right, so what we have here is we have different objects for this is for the area shape. Now it is turned on right here for my light source, but if I go to my light, an Omnilight that I haven't changed it from a inside my general. So the reason why I have this option right here for this area shape right here is because of the fact that I at one point in time switched it over to a area light inside here. And so once it did it, it unlocked these other settings. By default, with this light source right here, so this light right here, I can just delete it so that we don't get confused right here. This light right here, and let me get my area shadows on. There we go. Cool, excellent. That right there we go. We have right our shape. So there we go. Now what we're gonna have underneath here, we'll get into this area shape when we go back over the area, stuff like that, is the fall off area. Now by default, what this does with any of these lights, the fall off, is that there's no decay from our light source. So like, if I have a light bulb that's way over on this corner, it's gonna light up the whole scene equally. It doesn't matter how close it is to our object. So what we have right here is that this stalagmite right over here, and this one that's really far away is going to be lit up just the same as all of these little pebbles that are down here from this light source. Now, if I add a fall off to it, we have a couple different ones. We have a linear one, and let's kind of do some test render so we can kind of see how this works. So here is, we get the cave itself as well. Let's do the test one with none. So there we go. Here's our render without any fall off. Let's go to our linear. And let's do a render right here. So we can see the difference right here. So like this, again, this is lit up just as bright as this is. But then if I have right here, it's really bright right here, but then as you get farther away, you're starting to get a less light. Now this works, this is how it works in the real world. The big difference with how this works in the real world is not that light really dies off per se, is just for you to see anything, you're not actually visually seeing stuff. What's happening is that you have all these light rays that are bouncing off and stuff, they're going into your eyeballs. So what's happening is that for you to see anything, you have to have light rays that are going to bounce off stuff and hit your eyeballs. And so then your eyes see the different colors of the light rays, and that's how you can kind of see how things are going to be here. And so the way that this works is that as you get farther and farther away, so if I have, say I have a million light rays that go in all different directions. When you're really close, you have a smaller ball that you can have light rays bouncing around. But as you get farther and farther away, the space between where the light rays are going to be more spread out, and so that's why it looks like things are not as bright, because like there's not as many light rays hitting a concentrate. It's more about concentration of light rays. So that's why we're getting that right there. But as far as this goes, we can see that we have this orange cage, and that's going to give us a visual representation of how far the light rays are going to go. So as the anything that's outside of this light ray is or this orange sphere is not going to be affected by the light rays themselves. That's a linear one. And so that means is that as you go from 0 to over here, it's going to have at the very center, it's going to be 100%. And when you get to the edge, it's going to be 0. Now, next one we have right here is we have a step one. I go over here. And the way that this works is that at different spots, they're going to be lighter and darker. And now this one looks like it hits a little bit harder right there. That could be something settings that we have to adjust as well. And then we have inverse clamped. Gives us a little bit more right there. So like, as you can see, even between, this is where they're all turned off, or there's no fall off. And with the inverse clamped, it allows it to go a little bit farther, but it's still gonna die down a little bit. Now we also have our inverse square, which is physically accurate. And as you can see, that it's a lot because there are objects right there and whatnot. Now I will say I kind of like the linear ones, and we can kind of play around with it as well with these different settings. So inside here, if I go to my linear here, we have a inner radius. And so what this does right now is set to 0. So it means that the only thing that is different is at this point of in the middle right there is where it's set to 100%. So if I change my inner radius, it is giving me a greater area that is going to be filled with 100% light. So now this whole area is now 100% light with that. So now if I hit that right there, so here is the difference between these two. So it is very subtle at this point in time. Right there, and right there. So this one is the original with no linear, and then we have that one right there. All right, and then we have, so that's our inner radius as well. So if I make that a little bit larger, it's going to give me a little bit more light compared to these two. So as you can see, this is where I made it really big with that. So it's there's a lot more of a brighter sense to it and not as much of a fall off. So here is from the default, and this is with the really big one. Like the default has a nicer gradient from one to the other, stuff like that. So we do have that ability to play around with that as well to kind of give us a little bit more room of how much light you want to be on there. And then you also have your radius right here. So if I want this to be a little bit strong, you could say this is a stronger light because the lights are going to go a little bit farther. You can make the radius bigger, and it's going to give you a bigger area for you to light up the scene. And even if I turn my inner radius all the way down to 0, it gives me a greater area for it to play around with. All right. Other things you can do here as well is, this is a really cool thing that can be very fun to play around with, is this use gradient. Now I'm going to put some crazy colors on here. So let me throw in, let's say, like a green. There we go. And let me throw in like a purplish blue. All right. And let me go ahead and bring this back down to, I think it's 500 was the default. There we go. So here is how it is with default without the gradient, and here's with the gradient. Now this could be a better idea, or a better way to show you how strong the inner radius works. So as it gets larger, my green is going to be stronger. You see how that now how the green is a lot stronger because the green is right where the middle is and stuff like that. So that's how that really works. Again, this gradient can be used for all sorts of things. So we don't necessarily have to have it be this colors. So like you could do something maybe like a bright yellow, and then it dies off into like a darker orange or stuff like that. All right, so more of a gradient like that, and so then you could have more of a warmer feel. So if you're trying to play around with stuff, and again, if I wanted to really kind of get into that, maybe I'd make these a little bit more subtler with their colors. You know, I can have a lot more fun with these as well. And I could add, I mean, if I really want to, I can, you know, just like creating gradients inside anything, you know, you can have as much fun and wacky fun times with these gradients. And you can get some really weird things going on here. All right. Blues, there we go. So I got some weird colors right here, and then I can hit this right here. And as you can see, as the different steps happen, as far as the gradient goes, it's going to give me different looks. Maybe I'll bring my inner radius down right there. So again, so this is not something that you can do with I mean, you could probably do something like this in the real world, but it would be very difficult for you to do this without creating weird shadows and stuff like that. You don't have to use a gradient, but you have that option right there. All right, cool. Now let's go over this area shape, and I'm going to select my area object itself. So I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to go to my area light right here. I'll bring this in over here. And then we're going to see here, we have a couple different things right here as well. We do have the same options. We do have that, though we can change the aspect ratio and stuff like that. That just kind of adjusts, you know, or how big our object is and stuff like that. You know, we do have the shadow casters as well. And then we have something called an area, we have our area shape. So by default, you get a rectangle, but you can get a disc and stuff like that. And so let me see if I can change the size of this. So maybe I can get a better look of the different lighting sources you get with depending on the shape that you have. Maybe right here. Okay, cool. Let's try this. Here's our disc. And I think I probably should turn on the shadows as well. Turn that on. Boom. Here's our disc light that we have. Turn on our rectangle. These are just basic lightings. We're gonna have that go. Let's go down the line for a little bit. There's a line right there. That'll probably give us a different one as well. Now these might be like this one's a little bit more, a little bit different than the other one. So like these two right here, what I'm really getting here. So here is my disc. No, sorry, this is my disc, this is my rectangle, and this is the line. You know, they're different light sources that I'm getting with it depending on the shape that I have. You have a sphere. Now the sphere might, with kind of keeping it general how it is, it's a little bit closer to where it is. And we have cylinders, so it's going to give us different light sources. So the way that the area works is depending on the shape that you have, it's going to project light in different ways. So the cylinder is going to give you a light source. If, let's say if we had something like a neon bulb. So if I was able to have a neon bulb where it didn't have anything like a back shroud or anything like that, it would give you a light in a cylindrical fashion compared to like a light bulb. A light bulb is going to give you a light source that's in a round fashion, as far as if you think about how light rays are projected. And then you have a spotlight, it's going to be pointed in one direction. So this allows you to change the shape of that. So I have all sorts of options. I can have a hemisphere as well, and see if this one's going to work correctly. They are a little bit different depending on the object that we pick right there. We do have options for all sorts of things. And then you can also pick your own spline as well as the object as well. We can pick that as well. All right, let me do a sphere and let me make this an actual sphere shape. The Z is like crazy. Okay, cool. So I have a sphere right here. Let's do our, let me move this out of the way because it's like, there we go. Cool. Here is our area light. Cool. This is now a sphere shape. Let's make this 90. Oh, cool. There we go. Bring this down. There we go. Let's get a base render. Cool. This is our sphere shape that we did. Awesome. Now, we have these sample options. So there's all sorts of things that we can have right here. So let's crank this up. Let's do like 100. And let's see what this does. See if we can zoom in, see if we can see what the big difference is right here. So the sample size, I see there are certain, it's a little bit more subtle right here with this. But what's happening is that I see that there's different lighting settings as far as the quality goes. Now there a lot of I say the dirt that's right here has to do with the shadows and stuff like that, and we'll get into that as well. But the quality of the light itself is also cranked up a whole lot more. Now, I did increase the sample sizes, so it's going to give us more light rays and stuff like that. But what we see is that by increasing it to 100 from 40, it did increase my render time from 3 seconds to 5 seconds. Other things we can do here is we can add grain to our light source. Let's check that out, see what that does. So I'm not getting a ton of difference right real close, but I believe it's probably giving us some dirt and stuff like that. Now the thing is, when you are setting up a scene and you're playing around with these settings, depending on what you need to have, it may not be very beneficial for you to have it turn on or off, or the sample size and stuff like that, depending on the quality that you're getting out of there. Also inside here, we have our fall off. Again, we can do the same thing with that. We can have a linear one. This gives us a different setting inside here. So check that out. It does the same thing with that. All right, cool. All righty. Bring that in here as well. There we go. Right, there we go. Nice and big. Cool. Rock. There we go. Cool. So next one that we have here is we have our visibility tab. So if I don't have my visibility turned on, it's in my area like that. There you go. So if I don't have, like I have my visibility right here, but if I don't have that turned on right there, it doesn't matter what the settings we change right here, it's not going to do anything. So we have to always make sure that if you wanted to adjust your visibility settings, you definitely want to make sure that you have that turned on. Now inside here, we have all sorts of things. So like by default, the fall off is turned on. So see if we can, let me turn off the fall off for this. There we go. So here is our visibility with the fall off. And then let's go and see what it looks like when we turn that off. There we go. And hit the render button. So as you can see, that's really blown out. Now, the reason why that this is happening is that with the fall off, just like how we had the decay or fall off with the actual light, this is giving us a really bright center, and then it's allowing it to slowly not be as bright as far as it goes. But when you have this set up like this, just like with our light that doesn't have a decay on there, everything is set to 100%. So this is creating 100% light fall off all the way. I'm not entirely sure what's happening right there. Probably has to do something, whatever, right there. All right, so having a fall off is probably beneficial. You can play around with that if you want. We also have the same settings where we can play around with our distance. So if we want to have a greater fall off area, we can have that as well. So if it's falling off not as far as we want, that's really great. We can play around with that however we want. We also have the ability to play with the inner distance. Now, again, what that does is that it determines on how bright it's going to be. So here's the difference between with no inner fall off with a bigger inner fall off. It makes the area that is really intensely bright white a lot more intense because it's a greater area for it to be set to 100%. There we go. Other things we have is our sample distance and stuff like that. So if we crank that up, let me go back to 0. There we go. Delete this one. There we go. So we have this one, and that's this one right here. So this is a bigger samples distance right here. It is getting a little bit weirder with this right here. But why it looks weird though is because it's a lot more accurate. So while this may look like it's weird that's happening right here, but that could be because there's a lot of straight vertical things that are in the way of the light that's allowing it to cast down there and further. And the reason why I say that is because if I look over here, you see that I have more of a kind of a shadow right there, but it's not technically a shadow so much, but it's not as prevalent as this one, where I really see the light rays, or more when it's far over here. Now, when I have a greater sample size, I've seen more light rays. They're looking a little bit weird, but that's just because of the fact of the shape of the objects that are causing that to happen. So if I create a larger sample distance, so let's try 300 just for fun. There we go. So here's the difference between the 120 and the 300. Now, I don't see a huge difference between them, but the one thing that I see is that this does cost another second of render time. So for me, the 120, there's not much difference between that 120 sample size and the 300. So, I probably would crank it back down to the 120, however much I wanted it to go with it. The 120, right? 100. Yeah, cool. Other things you can do, so if it's too bright, you can always crank this down a little bit as well. The 100 is not where it was at. I think it was at 50 or something like that. So I can crank down the brightness of it. And it can give me more of a subtle look where I'm now just kind of getting over here and everything's not being blown out. All right, you can add dust to it. Let me add some dust to this. And then we can add some dithering as well. A lot of these things that you're going to see, they're going to be a little more subtle with the difference between these things. The other thing we can do the same thing. We can add a crazy gradient if we want. So if we want ours to be really weird, so here's a red, and then we can make this like a yellow way in the back, or this kind of a green. You can see that our visible light has that weird glow. And if I go back to my light source here, and I use a gradient on there, we're gonna get some really funky looks right here. So now I can have a different color gradients with the color themselves, and then we have the visible light that's gonna be on top of that. So I can have weird combinations between our light rays and stuff like that. So I can tone down the brightness of it a little bit, and we can have some really weird, interesting looks. So I have purple coming from the light itself, so it's projecting a different colors, levels of colors of light on the objects themselves, and then I have this weird glow that's being projected from that light source as well. Now, most people are going to try to have a combination of that, because you're not really going to have a light source that's going to project one color, and then the light, the visible light is going to be a different color if it has a color to it. And typically they're the same thing. But you have the option, so, and you can make it be additive as well. There we go. Cool. So that's the visible light that we have right there. I'll turn this off because it eats a whole lot. All right. All right, so the next one that we have is our shadow tab. Now, inside the shadow tab, I can change it from any of these ones, and it updates it on this general tab. So this shadow drop down is the same as this shadow drop down. So again, so if I change this to soft over here, go over here, it's set to soft, and I go back to area right there, it's going to be set back to area. Now, let's get in close so we can kind of see some of these lights in general. There we go. Get the base for what we're doing. Here is our base set with our area. Now we can play around with the density. So if I wanted to have it to be less dense, what you can see is that it is now not as dark. Now that was a really big jump. So maybe if we go down to 80%, 85%, you can probably see a better idea of what's happening right there. So let me get rid of this one. So here is it set to 100%, and then right there where it is set to a lower setting. So then we have, we still have our shadows that are being created, but there's not anything that's crazy. Again, options for all sorts of different reasons that you want. The other thing too that's really cool is that you can change the color of your shadows, which is something you can't do in the real world. So if I wanted to have these really weird blues, blue shadows. These are just tools to kind of do whatever you want. And this is not something you necessarily would do, but also this is something you cannot do in the real world. I cannot make my shadows different colors. All right. I'll turn up the transparency. There we go. So you can have all sorts of fun with it as well. Now, let me go back and we'll start this back up. Here is our base that we have. And some things that I see here with this area is you can see that you have a lot of little particles that are going to be inside here. Now, some of this can be, depending on the render size that you're having, you're doing. So like if you have a low render size, it's going to be it's going to have some sort of artifacting that's going to happen inside there. But you can also do stuff where we increase our accuracy. So if that was set to 75%, if I go to 100% and I hit render, there's not a huge difference with it. I mean, there is some more that look a little bit more subtle. A lot of these things too, when you move stuff around, they're a little more subtle. So it's probably a little more accurate with it. You know, I probably would crank this up because it's not really adding a whole lot of render time. So might as well have better calculations and stuff like that. But then we go over here is we have our sample sizes. So what this is doing is that per pixel is going to say, it's going to look at, okay, anywhere between 8 samples to 100 samples of calculations to determine what it should be. Now, we're going to go ahead and we'll crank this up to 100. And so what that means is that each individual pixel that's going to calculate for what it should be is going to be given 100 samples, and then it's going to do the math and it's going to figure out what's the best average between them. And that's going to give you the most accurate look of it. All right. What we can see here right off the bat is you're going to start to see that these are a lot smoother. You'll see these are really dirty right here. This is a little bit dirty right there. And then if I go to 100, you can see they're starting to smooth out, because what's happening is that you're getting a better idea of what it should be with all the different calculations. It's kind of like if you learn anything about, you know, like when people do research and stuff like that, you can do research on, you know, 5 people is not as accurate as if you do research on 1,000 people, because you have more like you're always going to have outliners and stuff like that. So the chance for the outliners to have a greater influence on your end result is decreased when you have a bigger sample size. Same thing happens right here. So when I had a smaller sample size, maybe some of these ones that are really crazy, like some of these, like inside this lighter gray spot, I have some big dark pieces that maybe I had, because those were like set to 8 samples. And so for whatever reason with the math, it just decided to make those a darker ones. So if I keep increasing, so if I go 200 to 200, we're going to have a better quality render. So again, if I go, this is my 8 sample sizes in 100, and this is my 200 by 200. You can see the big difference. I can see it totally right here where this is really blended really nicely. I don't have any weird stuff inside the top part right here. And now let's look at it between the 100 and 200. So here is the 100 and here's the 200. So we're now even more smooth. So this is really where we have to kind of determine, like, am I at the stage where is there any difference between the 100 and 200? Yes, I see that there's a benefit for adding a bigger sample size for this to get a better quality render. All right, it's because my shadows are a lot nicer. They're a lot more blended. They're more accurate because I'm doing more math values. Now, my render time did double, but it really only doubled by 2 seconds. So that's not as bad. When we start seeing like there's not a whole lot of change, but all I'm doing is adding more computational time, so more render time, then it's not worth it. But I can see a big difference between here, so that is quite possibly, you know, more beneficial. So let's go up another. Let's go 400. Let's double it right now, and we'll see how crazy this is going to get. There we go. We are now at 7 seconds, so it didn't even double it by increase it. So let's go back to here, this is our 8 by 100. So see how dirty this. I don't know if it really shows up very well. Does it look better? You see how dirty this is right here on the screen up there. But then if I go, this is my 400 by 400. you can definitely see it on there, the difference between how dirty this is and then how nice and smooth it gets right here. So with the greater render time, but now we just really should see even the difference between the 200 and 400. So I do see that there are some minor, it might be a little harder for you guys to see on the projector because it doesn't necessarily, might not be amazing, but there is some difference between this, because now the 400 is really a lot smoother. There's not as much artifacting. So this quite possibly could be more beneficial to make you have like a nicer look render. And let's go up again. Let's double it again. And hopefully this doesn't kill the computer. There's always that option. All right. So this is going to be even, we're going to double that out between the 400 by 400. And as you can see now at 12 seconds, will probably be 15 seconds. So that did double a little bit more. But let's look at our shadows right here. This is, and the thing that's really funny though, that I always see is that whenever I do the bigger step, I'm like, oh, that one looks way better and this looks really nicer. And then you don't realize how much artifacting is happening until you crank it up even higher. And now I'm like, okay, this looks even nicer. I like, this is a really nice gradient. This is a nice gradient too, but you know, it's going to be, still has some issues right there. Again, it's just things you have to figure out what really works best for what you have. And it's really subtle and it's like, it doesn't really matter. So it's really up to you guys on how to do it. I mean, we could even try it up again and again. So hopefully this doesn't really kill this computer, but we'll see. Now I really crank this up. So this is even more impressive than it was at default. Again, my render time is going to significantly increase at this point because now we are not even halfway done and it's already at the 15-second mark. But I can already see that there is some, it is really smooth. So now this is where now we're at. So now this isn't like I'm adding 2 more seconds. Now I'm doubling the 15 seconds. I'm doubling, you know, I'm adding 15 seconds to it. So is this better than this? Even looking at this right here, I don't see a whole lot of benefits. If I zoom in really close right here, I'm not seeing a whole lot more benefits. I mean, this is better because there is some minor stuff, but if I'm being realistic, I'm looking at it right here. I don't see the benefits between this. So I might see the benefits with this one and this one, because this one that I have right here that I set to 7 seconds, which I think was 400. This was 400. But the 800 definitely I could see there's still benefits, but between the 800 and the 1600, I'm just at this point in time, I'm not really seeing a big jump, and it's not worth that additional 15 seconds. Now, it depends on the project that you're doing. If I'm doing something for like a motion picture and stuff like that, I mean, we might even crank these up even higher to get even better quality because, you know, but if this is going to be something for like, I don't know, something like that's going to be on a commercial or stuff like that, that's necessarily going to be blown up really crazy, you know, this is not really worth, in my opinion. And, you know, it also depends on the situation. But if I was just rendering this out myself or to put up on YouTube or whatever, something like that, I wouldn't even crank that up because it's just adding render time to my overall render. Probably I definitely would at least not for this particular one, I'd probably not go lower than the 400 right there. But I mean, that one is a lot nicer. It's a lot less smoother that I see when I look at it. But again, you know, when things are moving around, you don't really notice all sorts of stuff. All right, cool. So yeah, so that's what we have right there. Now let me kind of go see if there is. So as I go to these other two, I do see that ray tracing hard, there's not much difference with the soft one. There's some other settings inside there, but for the most part, you're probably going to use just the area light because it's just more accurate. It's a lot nicer and stuff like that as well. So, But I probably would keep it at 400, but I'm gonna to go back to, I'll just keep it 400, 400. We'll have some render time that we can see that we're adding on to it. Okay. All right. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna jump across these, a couple other ones. We're gonna go to our noise. Now what the noise does, it allows you to add, noise to your light source, because right now it's all just pure color. There's no variation with the light and stuff like that. And not necessarily that light sources have variations with that, but this allows us to be a little more creative with our light sources. So if I go right over here, I have, with the noise type, it's set to default to none. I have illumination, visibility, and both. So what this does is when I do illumination and I render this out, seconds. Okay, let me go back and do one without it so that I make sure I'm in the same spot. Because I had to move my camera around. And then we can also see what happens with the render time as well. There we go. All right, so that didn't add any render time. So both nice seconds. So here's without the noise, and here is with the noise. You see, there's some dirty spots being projected and different stuff like that. We also have the ability to do it for the visibility. So if I turn on, let me go back over here and do none, and let's just do the volumetric right here. I'll render this out real quick. Oops, I got it's all crazy. Yes, let's stop that. Let me go back to my volumetric and make sure that it's not crazy like that. There we go. Cool. Excellent. There we go. I think I have that weird, what's the sample distance or something like that. All right. Man, I did something weird to that. Let's go and just delete this and we'll make another light. All right, cool, excellent. Here is my it's inside there. There we go. There we go. All right, cool, that's better. There is that without the noise for the volumetrics, and then we're going to go add some visibility on the volumetric. Let's see what that looks like. It's going to tone it down a little bit as well. And then we also have the ability to do it for both. So I can do it for both. It'll give us the noise for both the light and the volumetrics. Now I will say that this is very nice when we add it to both of them, because they both interact well together. So where there's dark spots, there's dark spots, and where there's light spots, there's light spots. Now it may not look really great because this is a soft turbulence. Now we do have the ability to change our different types of turbulences, and we also have all of these settings to play around with these different settings. But let's try something that's like a wavy one. So we'll see what that looks like. There we go. This gives us a little bit different, and it is. You can see the difference between these ones right here. That even the dust or what's happening is decaying a little bit here or there. Now, I like to also try to change Maybe like a hard one, see if that works with the hard one. Give us more dusty. I mean, it's just a different look that you're gonna kind of go for. It's like this is different than that one. That was the wavy. This is the harder one. So it gives us different looks on what we're looking for compared to just like where this is just really basic. This gives us a little bit of texture to it. You know, if I want it to not be as noticeable, I can increase or decrease the contrast to kind of get it a little bit closer together, so it's a little more subtle. And that might give you a little bit of detail right here. So like here where the noise is set to a little bit darker, you know, this gives us a different look than compared to this one. Like what one's more interesting, you know? By just with one light source, then well, this one might be a little more interesting with that. All right. Again, we have the ability to play around with all sorts of different things. We can add our wind. We can play around with all these different things, the velocity. I believe this works when you have, I think you can animate that stuff as well, and it changes how it's moving around. And you play around the scale and stuff like that. If you want to increase the octaves, that gives you more options and stuff like that as well. Play around with that. Okay, cool. Now, those are fun to play around with, you know, have fun with it and whatnot. The next one that we have is our lens. Now, these are lens effects like lens flares and stuff like that. These are all, and I'm going to say, these are all post-render effects that are applied to your scene. So very much like how a lens flare works with when you're filming in the real world, you know, that big blinding light, as much as J.J. Abrams wants you to think that it interacts with the whole scene, it doesn't. A lens flare just is the light interacting with the physical lens of the camera itself. So that light doesn't interact with your scene. And the reason why I say that is that this purple light right here, when I hit render, this is going to go through there, and then it's going to go bam, purple. All right. This doesn't interact with my scene itself. This is not making my scene purple. This is not, it's not interacting with any of these light rays or stuff like that. It's not going underneath here. It's going on top of it. So all of these settings, they're here to have a lens flare effect if you want, but please understand that it's all post-render. So it goes through this whole process of doing all the renders that you have, bam, throws it on top of there. Do with it however you like. I don't think that lens flares are awesome, but you know, whatever, to each their own. I'm just letting you know it's there and on how it works. So don't know why you want to use that one, but whatever, it's there. Yeah. Let's see if there's an option. Let's see, fade if near approaching object. Let's see if that's going to do anything. Nah, not really. Yeah, so there's no settings on any of these to have. I mean, like you can add more of these additional ones as well. So, I mean, play around if you want. I mean, I guess they're fun, you know, for some people if you're into the lens flares and stuff like that. But again, these don't interact with your scene. So. All right, cool. So the last thing that we're going to go over with these lights themselves is this project area. Now you might have other things that have and maybe not necessarily these, but like different objects and stuff like that you can create that also has this project thing. What this allows you to do is to determine whether or not this interacts with your object. And so to show an example of this, I'm going to create a big old box. All right, I'm going to throw this box over here. Now, if I normally do my render for it right here, you see that it's going to have my box. Oh my God, I left the lens flare on there. What did I do? Inactive, there we go. And turn that one off, inactive, cool. There we go. So I have my box that's right here. It's interacting with this light. Awesome. It's also, you know, causing issues because it's not, I'm not getting anything over there because it's blocking the light. All right. Now I can go over here and I can say, I'm going to exclude this cube from this. Now, because there's no other light source inside here, this cube will not be lit at all. So if I go hit this render right here, you see what the big difference is? So over here, where it's all black because the cube was filling it in, is now lit up because it's not being blocked by this big old cube. All right. I'm having the light being projected onto this object, so it's right there. And right now I just have this black. Now it might not look like a black void right now because I have my visible light. So if I turn off my visible light, so let me just delete this and let me turn off my visible light. Boom. And let's do our render. This is without the visible light. There you definitely see the box. I'm gonna go over here to the project right here, and I can select this box, and then we'll do the render again. See, now it's like a black void because there's nothing else that's making light for it to interact with this. So this is where we can get really complicated with some of our light systems and stuff like that. So let's say you have a scene and for whatever reason, maybe you have like a light glass and there you have a light source that you have somewhere down the line and it is lighting the scene perfectly. But for whatever reason, this particular object is making it glow or is way too bright and stuff like that. So then you can go through here and we can exclude that. Or on the flip side, let's say we have a scene and we want to have, let me just delete this right here. Maybe I want to be able to have this silhouette light up. So I'll create a second one right here. And I'm gonna put it right behind here. And let's just check it out, see what happens when I have these two light sources. Let's see if I can get it into a better spot. So I want to, okay, cool. So maybe I want to light this up right here. Because before, oh, is it wrong? There we go. So before, this is what it looked like, but this is really dark right here, but I want to light that up. So what I can do is I can create another light source that I have right here. And then now I can light that up right here. All right, so now this is being lit up a little bit more. The problem that I have now is, oh, did I move the wrong one? I did move the wrong one. There we go. That one. There we go. Bam, bam. So here we go. Let me go do those renders real quick again. So here is it without it, and then this is with it on. So now I can see this side of the box. For whatever reason, if I wanted to light it up, maybe to break it up from the background or whatever. But the problem is that I have lit the rest of the scene up. I didn't just lit this part up. I've lit the rest of the scene up. So what I can do is I can go to this new one that I have, and I could say, we're going to include. And we're going to say, I'm just going to select the cube. And now if I have this done correctly, this is where I don't have it, and this is where I just included this one. And so now what this allows me to do is to add that object or whatever objects has can just interact with just that light. So when you are lighting a scene, sometimes you give your object a 3-point light system. So you have like the main light, you have a fill light, and you have a backlight. All right, this can give you a backlight, so maybe I won't have this as extreme, but if I want to be able people to see this cube, maybe maybe what I'll do is I'll go over here, I'll just decrease the intensity a little bit. And so now I can have something where now I can see that box right there a little bit more for whatever reason. Or if I wanted to be a little more creative, I could say, okay, well, then maybe I want this light source to give it some blue color. So that's a way for creatively, adding a blue light allows you the audience to see like maybe a pitch dark, the pitch darkness, but to still see stuff because, if you are filming out in the forest and, there's no light source right there, you're just filming like, black, there's no color, no light, no anything like that. But then what people do creatively is that they'll add light to allow you to see stuff, but they'll use like a dark blue color to then kind of get away with things being dark like that. So now if I render this out, now I kind of gave that dark blue layer so I can kind of see what that's right there, kind of give an idea of the volume of what's right there, but it's not interacting with the rest of the scene. So this can be very beneficial. You can add stuff and take stuff away. Unfortunately for you guys, on this particular project, all of these objects that I have are just one thing, so you're not able to do that. But just so you know, you do have that option for whatever reason, you can do that as well. So again, this is a great way for you to add benefit to your render and your scene that you're trying to do in a way that we can't do that in the real world. I can't have a blue light right here and have it only project on that object. Maybe if I have it a little bit higher, then I can get both of those sides right there, a little more subtle, so I can see both the top and the bottom right there. I can't do that in the real world. There's no way in hell that there's nothing that I can do to have something like that, which is nice. But so it's nice to have the ability to do things the exact same way as you do in the real world, but also it's nice to be able to do things that you can't do that are impossible. But we're going to do them for artistic reasons, for whatever reason we want to do. Okay, so I know that was a lot of talking about light and stuff like that. We will have another class that we're going to talk about light, but it's going to be about global illumination, but that's going to be more of a rendering class because that's more of that portion right there instead of just like light objects. But overall, this is the nitty gritty of how we have stuff for our 3D stuff. Now you are going forward, having light sources is going to be how we want to render stuff as well, but either through global illumination or with these light sources, stuff like that, because we're going to get nicer looks of renders, even with something as simple as, if I just have this one light source, and let me just turn off this noise, and I don't have I just have this one light source, this looks a lot nicer right here than if I turn that off and I have my default light like this. This is like screaming, like this is part of a computer, where this is like, okay, well, then maybe this is a diorama or something like that. There's a little bit more, is a lot more theatrically appealing than something like this. Okay, cool. Any questions with the lights and stuff like that? This is a lot of experimenting. Even when you know what you're doing, you're still going to do some level of experimenting. You're gonna put stuff where you want them to be. You're going to hit the render button, see how that looks, and then you're going to tone stuff around, move stuff around, change stuff around that way. That's the whole process, is just kind of like hitting this render buttons and stuff like that and trying to explore with this stuff. Okay, so for this assignment, you're going to take this file and you're going to use multiple lights to set up the scene. So like we're going to light up the scene. to make it look like something that you want to feel a portrayal. So if you want to have like if this is a ruins that are in an Arctic area, so like what colors can you bring for the scene? If you want to have something that's underwater, what can we have? If we want it to be a jungle theme, whatever you want it to be, you're going to set up these lights. And there's inside this scene, there's all sorts of really cool things you can do. So like I can do little area lights for these torches. If you want to have all these torches lit up, you can do little sources and have like the area effect be around there. There's all sorts of things that we can do with this. You're going to use multiple lights throughout here, and you're going to create something that's going to be interesting. All right. There is no, it is up to you on what the theme is going to look like. I just want, if you throw one light that's on, doesn't count. I want you to be thoughts of the reason why you lit up your scene. So, again, that's why you have to pick you have to tell me your theme in the comments of the direction that you want to go with it and what you're trying to achieve. And then you just have to turn, I believe you turn in, let me have you turn in, here we go. Let's do turn in both the .c4d file and a render. I don't care what the file format is, just like a screenshot. And for the render, what I want you to do is, once you have this lit up however you want, kind of look for one that you think like an angle that's interesting, and then take render. So if you're like, you like the way that the lights look right here, take a picture, render it out, save it, and then upload it. All right, cool. Any other questions or anything like that? Yes. Yes, you can. Yep. And not every single light has to cast shadows either. So just keep that in mind. So like if no, I have all. I want you guys to be as creative as you want. So like if you say, hey, this is like a scene from some weird toxic Avengers type thing, and there's like lots of greens and stuff like that, that's cool. If you say, like there's the underwater one, there's like, there's all sorts of different, I've had all sorts of different creative things people can do. I've seen circuses, I've seen all sorts of different things. So
What were you building this for originally?
So my idea was that I was kind of just trying to push myself, and I wanted to make this like a real-time like a level or something like that. And I was gonna have, I was doing a low poly version of these objects, and then I was going to do a higher res one of it. The farthest is the high res that I got was the spider, and I can actually show you some examples I have of it. So let's do. Where is it? Okay, so this was the first version of the spider head that I went with. So what it was, because remember how we were talking about normal maps and stuff like that? We would have got all the lighting information, and it would look like that, but with the silhouette of this head. So this was going to be a low res version, and then that was going to be the lighting information it would look like. And then what I ended up turning it into actually went in this direction with it. So because I thought maybe it's more like instead of this, like the first one was kind of like a realistic spider head, and then I was like, okay, well maybe these are just like statues, and so they're going to be more, like, or ornamental with like the stuff like that. And then I did the body too as well. So this lighting information would have been put on that, but that's as far as I got. And then stuff happened, and I just never never finished it. I never finished it, but then I just started using it in class because it's beneficial to kind of see how lights work within a scene. I think it's a lot more interesting too, and this was a pretty fun project for people to do too as well. So didn't go to waste. by this. It was just like a ruin of a temple or something like that. Like it was gonna be something where it's gonna be like a real-time, kind of like a screen render, like somebody would show up on the port, and then they'd walk up the stairs, you know, and then whatever, you walk up the stairs, and then this would be like the entrance to, like, as they're walking up the stairs, what you'd see, you know. You look down there. So I think it into this.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I did have parts that I was like really kind of making a whole lot. I had one version of this, instead of a spider, it was like a really big snake thing. I don't think I did anything with it. I don't think I even have a yeah, it was like a snake. I might have a version of it somewhere, not in this one. Where is it? I don't think it's in here. No, this is something else. But you guys might like this one. There we go.
Whoa.
Yeah, so this was a thing that I did, and see if I can get where is the images? So this, it was like this one right here. I kind of use this as my reference art. So like this guy, this is all the pictures I had right there. I have another one that's put as in Maya. I'm working on this one right here. But this is this one right here. So I kind of use this as an example, and then I kind of built like this 3D thing with it. Yeah, you can do this. I mean, this is not this one. So this one was a little bit more complicated, just because.
It's your fault.
No, you guys have all the ability. I mean, like you know, I have had many years of experience doing this stuff, but you know, God, I don't even think. Yeah. So I exactly. So like, is you guys saying that you can't do it? This just means that you may not be able to at that level right now. But this one was pretty interesting because I had all sorts of bends on here. So to get it to bend correctly, because this is a complex bend, so it's not only is it bent bowed in this way, but it's also bowed in this way, that I had to apply 2 bends on there. And the reason why, so I mean, what if I can turn this on? Here we go. Yeah. So here is the first bend, and so it was a combination of getting these both turned on for me to see how they're going to bend. So I think the first one, was it this one? Yeah, so this is the first one. That's the first one that does. So this one bent it like this, all right? And so then the second one, that was when it was able to bend like this. And it's at a weird shape because it's a child, and that's just the way it showed up after moving it around. Yep, and the other thing that's really cool, you see how you have all of these holes in here. If I turn off the bends, you see how they interact? Because what's happening is that I have all of these underneath here. And this is a connect that we have right here. So, no, is that a connect? Okay, here it is. So these are my pegs right here. All these ones right here, these little pegs right there. Okay, Now, they're all under connect, so they're acting as one object. And then this is my bool object, so my bool tool. Yeah, the bool tool. It's pretty cool. It subtracts stuff. And what this is actually happening here, the way I was able to get this to be really big, or that it's not sticking through there, is because so these pegs themselves are a different object than what the cutouts are. So the cutouts, they're just big, so I can turn that off. See, so these are the cutout shapes. So they're a little bit thicker than that. But what happened is that with this bool, it kind of subtracts that one and just kind of gives me that look. So I have this object right there, and then I have the little thicker parts that are right around him to give me that look. Now that one might be an issue. Well, I think that's fine if it's stuck in a little bit right there. But yeah, so that's kind of how I did those holes. So. I think these are the same thing. Where are these at? I think I was working on that. Maybe I made them specifically. Yep. So that was pretty much what I was working on with this thing. So I don't know if I have that ruined one. I don't know where it is. This might be in a different folder. Maybe it's here. Oh, I think I have it here somewhere, maybe. These are all my files. I can open them up. What's up? Sure. Oh, so this is the visibility. This is the purple one is the right. Oh, you know why it's not there? Go to your general. Oh, it's on inverse volumetric, so that's the opposite. So so vector visibility, and then move that around again. So this is your outer distance. So that's how far it's going to go. So that one probably has to do with the light fall. So good details. But you don't have the ball turn on. You turn that to like linear. So that's how far like your light is going to go, and then the volumetric is the purple. So that's your visible light.
Yes, the content. I knew it.
Oh yeah, that looks good.
Just you wait, Brian.
So I think the fun thing with doing this not having any texture or material on the objects is that it allows you to see how much you can apply to a scene with just lights themselves. You can get the colors for that. Like and all the materials and everything, so that's where stuff starts building on top of each other. But lights are very important. Yeah, I mean, just like, and regular film too as well.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
Yep. I was just gonna say, I'm good over here. Just looks like a lot of fun stuff to play with, honestly. So
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So I think you guys are gonna all enjoy it.
so I'm good to
Yes, you are good to go.
sweet. All right. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.